Welcome to this journey where we dialogue with thought and heart leaders to share their reflections on human condition and how to improve them.
Badri, can you take us through some of your earlier memories as a child? How were you like a child? What are your earlier memories?
Okay, so first thing, I was born in a small town called Shrirangam. So you must have heard of it. It's in Trichinopoli.
Yes.
And I was born in a joint family. As it's kind of weird to say that nowadays, right? Joint family is a family of four itself is a joint family nowadays. So I was born in a joint family. We had about close to 22 people.
Wow.
And then the day I think I was born, we also had the famous Kaveri floods. So I came as a flood of consciousness. Let's put it that way.
Wow.
And I did I was there a little bit for a while. I mean, I was there in 6-7 years 5 to 6 years in Shrirangam. Then I moved to Bombay. My famous Chembo. That's where I did my schooling for a while. So we were like I said, in Shrirangam, what I remember was like it was a very very religious family. We all had back in those days brought in a Brahmin household. We all had to learn art, learn shlokas and stuff like that. So there's a lot of so that was part of our daily regime, if I'm right. So it'd be like a family in which it's almost like a school where you had my cousins learning singing, and then one person would be learning veena, and all teachers were at home actually. So
I have a small curiosity here, Badri. So early on in your childhood, you were exposed to these shlokas and these cultural activities. How did you soak it in initially? Were you comfortable, or were you questioning? Were you resisting?
Well, I didn't even know what was happening. But the good thing is like about power of mantras, right? It's like because when you're so young, and even when the whole flood was happening, I remember my uncle was carrying me to the top floor in the home, and apparently he was reciting the Gayatri mantra to protect him from the floods.
Okay.
So it's funny, like we used to have the Sandhya Vadan and stuff like that you're supposed to do. So my grandpa or something, like he would never even say that when regular days. Now the flood comes and he decides to chant mantras. So I was I always get that, but I think that those things in that era, especially in the 70s and early 80s, it's just that the focus on spirituality was a lot, especially Shrirangam being such a religious town, and so temple was the only way of life, So I think even today it's stuck with me, and every time if I hear to spiritual discourses by other teachers, there's always that I could easily go back to Shrirangam and it makes so much sense now.
That's nice.
And like I said, you must know this because the power of shlokas is and Sanskrit and mantras they have gone through years and years, and like close to as many years as you can think of, and they come from a different level, and the vibrations. I think it's beyond our understanding, but we all know that it is true at the highest level.
Great. And Badri, how were you as a student?
Good question. I should have asked my dad. In a way, I'm glad he's not around because he would tell me the truth. No,
So, Badri, you were explaining your studentship.
Yeah, studentship. No, math. I'm actually also, not to blow my tom-toms here. I have I'm also a math savant.
Oh, okay.
So that was kind of, I don't know if it was stress or my dad making me study really hard. No, actually I can go, I think divide, multiply numbers mostly to any extent. Without,
what are you saying?
I thought you knew that. You didn't?
No,
okay.
no ways.
No, that really, I don't know what it helped me with, other than just kind of like at least in when we were trying to woo girls, that was a good stunt. Like
Okay.
especially math was a good thing. So yeah, that was there.
So
Then
you would
school, and
make
then
so you would make calculated moves.
yes, calculate. Yeah, it's true. But against women, all calculation fails because they defy logic. So it's like with them, it's yeah,
I will need to edit this because otherwise you'll get trolls on media.
No,
Okay.
but yeah, as a student, I was more, but yeah, just a regular kind of, but obviously I did my little bit of schooling. I think as with my very early years, my grandpa was my teacher up in Shrirangam. So he was I think he was the head something of the school, and so I could come in and go anytime and whatever. So it used to be I enjoyed that more. Bombay was kind of like a huge culture shift for us. Like so, I would always want to run away, and every time I would pray for the rain. And back in the days, we used to have some good rain, and you know how Chembur used to be. All you have to do is stand in the water, and you would come home. You know? And then from there, actually, after that, I moved to Bahrain. That's where I did my rest of the schooling. And so there again, it's like every time I went there, it was like for me, it was like a big shift. So I would all teachers remember me for coming up with Bollywood-like stories, of wanting to come home. So I would say like I'm a heart patient. I need to go home. I didn't have my tablets, stuff like that. So as a student, I was really more I would say pretty good. Say average. Let's say average. Average is the right word.
Yeah.
But math, I used to be awesome. So I would have this exceptional performance, and then it's kind of like, like Virendra Sehwag or someone, he'll score a 300 and then not score much for a few. Kind of like I would have one big innings, and everybody would be thinking like, oh, this guy's got amazing potential, and all that. But the problem was being a math savant thing. The issue was I would have the answers, but I would not have the steps. You know how in school we used to have
Interesting.
marks for the steps, right? They give you half marks, so they would think that I was cheating, and so I didn't have an explanation. So and then the professor would always ask me, "I'll give you 1 mark for the answer, but you're not giving me the steps." But I would be like, and I know the answer. I can see it, But school, I was more, But I would again, even in school, I was more into tennis and all the other sports. But yeah, I would say decent enough student. When the pressure was there, I would perform. Pressure coming from obviously my dad and mom on that side. And then because they were thinking like, what is this guy going to become, kind of thing. And then I would do all the right things. So
Great.
until then, I would just be like waltzing. So
Great. So, when did I know it's sometimes these kind of questions framing the question becomes problematic in itself. But if I were to ask, when did the shift happen? When you started taking the wisdom traditions more in a more I would not say serious manner, but a practicable or applicable manners.
yeah, I mean, first thing is like obviously exposure to these even spirituality, and it started in a completely different manner. For me, especially, it was more towards we since we have grown up in this kind of a background. So at that point, we don't tend to realize its value. And today, you see everybody quoting from the importance of Om and Gayatri Mantra and all that. It comes from different religions, and you're like, wow, how do these people, and here grew up right in the backyard, and we didn't realize its value. But for me, it was more like once I got into engineering, especially, and I came down to India for that. At that point, again, it was tennis. It started off because I was playing, obviously college tennis, and tennis was part of my life right through, even till date, it's part of me. But at that stage, it was more, and then I was reading up an interesting thing about for PeteSampras actually, and about how, because I could see him and he was very cool. And all these spiritual lessons come in unbelievably different ways. So I could see this. What's up with this person? This particular player was like always showing composure, calm, and kind of like a very even keel, no matter what the situation. And then I read I was looking up different kinds of stuff, like what is this about? Like, because sport is so active, and then how can you have that calmness? And then this person's name came up to me was AllenFox. AllenFox, when this thing goes live, I would want to share this with Allen, because AllenFox was my who in the future became my mentor eventually. But prior to that, I had read his books on, his famous book on sports psychology and all that, and it was in my library, and then it had his address and stuff like that on it, and about how he helped with players and how important of sports psychology. And that's where he talks about composure, confidence, and all that stuff. So, and from there, and there were a few things that he mentioned about importance of being calm and meditation and all that stuff, and because it's not like we all didn't know about meditation, but we didn't see how it would relate to something like sport, which is so dynamic. How come stillness can promote such vibrant activity, and so from there I got into this whole, once meditation comes in, and then that's where my first spiritual book, I would say, was, which again, I started reading the Dhammapada by the noble eight, the eight noble truths about from Gautama Buddha. So I used to keep reading that, just kind of like for hours and hours and hours, trying to figure it out, And that's probably where it's kind of like started off with PeteSampras, and then AllenFox, and then one line he mentioned about the importance of meditation. And then I went into, that's where I read about Dhammapada. And then I ran into another book called The InnerGame of Tennis by Timothy Gallwey. And he mentions about the importance of meditation also. So started off with, the wisdom started off with something that I was playing, right, about tennis and all that. So that I could say then, even at home, my parents would be like, why are you reading this all day, buddy? So, but that was, and it's like, I'm glad I'm reading this and getting, distracted and also my own personal situation and all that. A lot of things that were happening in my backyard that also forced me to read that a lot, because I felt I needed a quieter space. And then with sport and all this stuff, it felt like spirituality was answering both my questions, not only just to tennis, but also just kind of giving me a sense of peace and something that I can hold on to when things on the outside were not looking great. So
yeah, great. So it's coincidental. This morning I was listening to a podcast by MihalyCsikszentmihalyi.
Oh.
Yeah, and he was talking to Dr. Judson Brewer. Judson has come out with a book on habit. How can the practices of mindfulness help you curate better habits and de-addiction and move towards de-addiction. So it's coincidental that during the conversation they were talking about what's the relationship between stillness and dynamism, which you just mentioned. It's difficult for people to wrap their heads around how can practices of stillness lead you to better disposition during dynamism. Can you unpack that a little bit in terms of what's been your personal journey on looking at this dynamic?
Yeah, the thing is, it comes down to, the main concept is trusting the intelligence of the body. So the whole idea, starts with babies walking, right? So they see something and they see adults walking, and so they want to walk. They look and then they try to mimic the moves, and they're walking, and then they're running. And same thing, for us, we would think it's like cycling, right? You would think cycling is impossible when you're young. How is this even possible, and then you learn, you fall, you break, and then you eventually the body's intelligence takes over, and we do that so unconsciously, and somewhere down the line we've kind of lost that touch with that body's intelligence. So we question, I think that once the logical side of the brain grows, we are questioning everything, and there's little bit of, I would say, by lack of better words, just lack of quietness within, and we start, we want to have the conscious mind direct everything, and in that process, it's always hard, and also the fact that we seek credit for, what we're doing. We don't want to say like, like there's one interesting story, like you mentioned, in the inner game of tennis, where one particular businessman was having a hard time learning to serve, and then Tim makes him go through some sessions, and gives him some insights. Okay, these are things that you need to be aware of, and helped him kind of build a strong serve. And he was like really doing well day in, day out. And then 1 week later, he comes back, and then his serve went back to what it used to be. So Tim's like, what happened, And he said, yeah, what you were saying was great, and I was really enjoying it, but then somehow I didn't feel in control. So it's almost like it was his own body doing it, and he just, because he felt like, oh, who's this person doing it? Is it all happening by fluke? So in other words, he had lost his touch with his body's intelligence. So being a businessman, you always want to be in control of things, and so it's kind of, and then that's when the whole thing is like, what really is control? Why do we seek that? Why do we seek that credit? So to kind of answer your question as to like his first step obviously was when he was doing that right. He just had his conscious mind focus on something that is still, like your breath, or being in the moment, just kind of listening to what's being told, and the subconscious was grasping everything, being and then in that moment, the conscious mind wasn't trying to say do this, do that. It was just focusing on something neutral, and then the subconscious took over, and that's where the action happens, which is, again, this is always miraculous, right? It's kind of like the same thing when I look back at it as math, right? You just start off, and then the brain's intelligence takes over. Then when somebody asks me like, hey, break it down for me, like I wouldn't know. How do I break this down? Because I know there is a process happening. It's not like it's not fluke. But for me to break it down was very difficult. Every time I try it, because folks would say, why don't you teach this to my kids about it? And again, it's something which you can kind of give them direction, but then I always said I'm not going to say the typical cliche, oh, it's all natural. No, it's just that it is, once I have surrendered to the body's intelligence, then the dynamic action starts happening. All I have to do is find ways to keep myself still. And I've seen that happen time and again. Every time the mind's still and in the moment, this thing about stillness and dynamism, and you see the best players, even like guys like Roger who are playing tennis in this era, that their best is when we know when they look at them that this guy's mind is still. There's no thinking happening. He's just in trust with himself. It's not like the others cannot do, but you can easily spot the difference when one is still internally and dynamic action happens, and versus the one who's trying hard. So most of the time we end up trying to like go with a guy who's trying really hard, because we kind of can relate with him, because for us the conscious mind is running, and so we feel sad for the guy. But the one who is poetic, one who is kind of, we always saw like, he's just a showbie or something like that. It's just I would say that to break it down simply without going too much, I think it's just finding ways to firstly quieten our conscious minds through different methods like meditation or mantra, japa meditation, or just listening to spiritual discourses. There are multiple ways you can do that, even body awareness exercises, tai chi, you name it,
Yeah.
And then it's not like it's if people have asked like, if I do this is going to happen. That's when you ought to be kind of like, the only purpose for you is to surrender to that process, and then see what happens, because that's where the thing, once you start, like, it's a very hard thing to do, because the conscious mind, if it's not subdued entirely, then it's going to come up and say, there's no way this is going to lead to this, this is going to lead to this, and then you're fighting that inner battle. So it's kind of like every time that creeps up is to, the discipline is to be making the conscious mind quiet. Hey, focus. Okay, I understand your concerns. Now get back to the breath. It's kind of like my father instructing me. I know your thing. Just go back to studying. Kind of that. You're just telling you're redirecting, and over a period of time, which is exactly what Pete was going through. Like PeteSampras is a classic guy. He went through this, and then he realized that what are the top guys who've done consistently well over a long period of time. So they were able to have a quieter minds, and they were like disciplined in there, and he worked so much mentally, and because he didn't just see I want to win, but he also wanted to win over a long period of time and also have consistency. And again, working on the mental areas is what also eventually takes you to the highest level.
Right. Would you then say, Badri, this is this in some way connected or correlated with what MihalyCsikszentmihalyi calls as flow experience? Would that be a fair conclusion?
Absolutely. Again, like to each has his own way of expressing that, and I've read it, and it's what he says is very, very clear about, in terms of how flow happens, is when, again, you are so total in your action, you're so present in what you're doing, and in that process, obviously, like there's that intelligence that takes over. Again, it's not something that you can force, which is the part that is very hard for, again, like I said, the conscious mind to to adopt. Even though they are amazed when they see like an Usain Bolt performing, or a Roger Federer in full flight, then it's just the fact that oh wow. But if you ask each one of them, they always say, oh, at that time it's a blur. I'm total with what I'm doing. And which is, again, means when you're one with it, means the mind is still. It's not that your mind is still and then you are basically not doing anything, which is where the conscious mind tries to confuse it. So yeah, to shorten what you're saying, is like, the flow is exactly, you can define it in that way. Yeah.
So I was just, there's just curiosity to learn on this. I'm wondering, how would people in defense get trained? In the sense, look at Navy SEALs or commandos in India, the NSG, and these guys actually undergo, I think, some of the most rigorous training on the planet, and I would imagine that at every stage, the task demand the task demand is too high for the skills that the person has. The person is constantly having this. How would they be getting trained, and would they be experiencing flow when they're getting trained? Because there's so much of breaking down of, so much of wear and tear happening at the mental space and the body space.
Yeah, it's a good question that you have, because Navy SEALs, especially in the United States Defense, it's funny, like all the sports psychologists, mental conditioning coaches, even obviously psychiatrists in the other departments, they are all an integral part of SEALs training. Not just SEALs training, but just kind of U.S. Defense alone, because they go through immense amount of mental pressure. Sometimes it's, of course, performance-related. Sometimes it's just the fact that they are in the highest risk area, like come the challenge. Like, sometimes they're waiting for some things to happen, and that's when they go out there. But there's 95% of the time, they are spending time preparing. It's like preparation. Like Navy SEALs, you would say 95% is all about preparation. The 5% is the opportunity. If you look at, for them, the whole Osama bin Laden's, capture, you can call that, with all the things, the subtleties they are in, where they are and how they're going to get there and, perform this surgical operation. So surgical is it's a very popular word nowadays. So, but yeah, so to conduct that in with such ruthless professionalism and yet being very subtle, it requires a lot of situational awareness training. So when you speak about Navy SEALs, it's all about they are trained for every possible scenario that they can think of. Like they are almost like simulation of so many different kinds. What if this happens? What are you going to do? And you have to be like completely in sync with that. It's almost like role play, but it's just that they are trained and they do it repetitively to the point where it becomes complete second nature. When this particular, an intruder comes out of nowhere, how are you going to respond? So they are like completely and consciously trained, and they're prepared at such high levels. So the point the subconscious, when it responds, it's they of course there's a lot of trust in the intelligence that goes into it, but that comes through a lot of heavy conscious training. And again, when an opportunity presents, then how is the subconscious going to respond? Again, they're going to trust, let the subconscious respond and observe how it is, and then obviously they refine their responses in each of those scenarios. So and it's very similar. Again, it's like sport and war scenarios are completely different, but as far as letting your body's intelligence respond, it's pretty similar. So again, it's just making sure that it's like even in their sleep, they should be. There have been a lot of even situations we do where they're tested in such a way, like suddenly in their sleep when something happens, then they know exactly where their gun is or where they need to be. It's just they're so finely tuned. And again, they're overtrained. They're overtrained to the point where it's like even their third or worst responses is still good enough to get them out of situations like that. So to answer your question, yeah, and then it is such a big role, and that's why everybody asks like, how come you have mental coaches in this area? And again, because the whole reason is to fine tune your performance and make sure that you respond appropriately.
Yeah, that's pretty dense and nicely explained. Can you describe some of your work, Badri, that you've been doing and how you have evolved in your own practice? Can you take us through some of that?
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, when I came here to Utah and started obviously working with tennis groups here, and again, it was a very for me because of all this, with the knowledge and of course the degree I was pursuing and all that. And I wanted to see how I can integrate, and I was blessed to have mentors like AllenFox, and I would read their stuff and like, oh, okay, this is good. There's a lot of things like also Brewer was another one, and of course Tim Gallwey is probably again being very kind of specific, and then obviously I was applying it to my own game, and when I was playing and all that, and seeing how this, and again it's just the fact that it's how you're going to manage the pressure, because on one end you are trying to do the inner game effectively, and making sure and seeing how the body responds, what are the things, again not judging yourself, but kind of letting the body's intelligence take over. And then I would apply it, take notes. Okay, this is, and then I also had the pressure of my peers saying, "Hey, we got to win this, win that, win this." That's kind of which is normal. I'm not saying it was wrong, but for me, I was looking at the game from a different perspective, and where I'm kind of beyond these wins and losses, right? So I wanted to make sure that I would learn stuff like that, and then I would write up notes. Okay. And again, my other challenge is like, okay, my peers are thinking like this, but then the professionals are going to be having the same questions, because for them, the winning is even more. How is this going to be like sinking in their heads, But I was looking at then coming up with methods. So where their conscious mind was only focusing on those methods, but the subconscious was working, without them so my way was like to not trick the mind, but kind of like allow, I would tell them like, hey, let your mind kind of, experiment with this and let's see what happens. So I wouldn't tell them, because the moment I tell them I want this to be, the reason I'm doing this is this, then they would become super conscious about both. And then they would kind of not do a good job of it because they are, this guy is saying something to trick my conscious mind, that's because, again, the conscious mind playing, it's and so I would come up with methods and stuff like that. And that's kind of how it grew, because more and more methods I gave, the more and more these guys started doing it. Also, they started seeing results, and they're like, hey, I was trying to fix this problem for this much time, but voila, this happened in like 3 sessions, and for them, that gave them the trust, and then after that, once they start, the trust builds, then they feel like, okay, I'm definitely doing something more different in this, and then that's why I'm seeing all these results. And so then at the same time, they are growing too, okay, and then they would then get curious about, okay, what is this all about? And that's when I feel like, okay, I have succeeded. Not when they were, when they were seeing all these other results, but once they started getting curious about the sport itself, becoming, how you're going to grow in the sport, and then figuring out, like why do I lose one day? Why do I win one day? What are the things that go on? Look, why it's the same racket, it's the same body, but the mind is fluctuating. What can we do? And once they start asking questions like that, I think more for me, it's like, this is not just going to help them in sport, but also in their lives, in their personal lives, and that's where the fun begins. But the initial part is the hardest, is because each one is going to come and say, they think sports psychology or even mental conditioning as you give them this mantra and then go, like, it's like, that stuff we do in our priests, like, okay, you do this, then, Vishnu is going to take care of everything, and that's it, So, in a subtle way, and so, and they were thinking like that because they expected some sort of results, just instant results, so, but now it's, and now players are maturing, growing, they're looking at everything as a possible edge. So yeah, so my work, it's like especially with players, even it's here in the US, it's like sports psychology evolved in the early 40s, 50s, when right from, again, started off in the war times, and then obviously translated into sport, and then Allen came onto the board and everything. So here it's definitely more, it's more mature. And then bringing it to India was obviously was a big challenge. And then we had there are really some really good coaches out there in India too. Translating what we got here into our players there, that was obviously a big challenge. But the fact is, like, people are more open now than what it used to be. And because again, many couldn't differentiate between what sports psychology, mental conditioning is, and what psychiatry is. So immediately when you hear the word psycho, it's like, oh my gosh, something is wrong with me. So, and once they get into it, it's a lot more easier. And for me, again, it's been a very rewarding journey, because once I see I'm able to help out the players in removing the cobwebs of doubt, and and then come out of that, I don't think anything can beat that. So
yeah, if we look at psychology in general, we see that a lot of the practitioners of psychology, as in the psychologists, would agree that not every tool in psychology works for everyone, and there are cases of failures. There are cases of, I would not call failures, but somehow the causal chain doesn't work. What has been your experience of the toolkits that you have developed, the concepts that you have developed, and you worked with a wide variety of players? Would you agree that even there are a lot of things that still you don't have a universal law in psychology?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's exactly why we're mentioning, because it's like each one is like my partner Ramji would say, like, everything is a thumbprint, right? And then everyone is unique. So that's why it's vital that you you got to be always on the edge on those. Like looking at obviously instruments and stuff. There are a lot of things that have come out. People are trying to promote different products and stuff like that to, again, address these mental areas.
Right.
Because sports psychology is one, then there's also like if I find a guy behaving in a way that's not related to psychology but more related to psychiatry, then I got to make sure that it's to differentiate, because even in our first, when we begin, we say this is what I'm responsible for. But if there are issues like these, related to complete personality related stuff, then I would make sure that that person is with somebody else for that particular area. Because again, you got to be very clear about what is your area and what is somebody else's. You just don't want to be like, getting your feet wet in every area. So the main thing for us, like that's why when we when we do our initial assessments and stuff like that, find out what they're going through. And obviously, when players or clients talk to you about different issues, because they're in a very relaxed arena, so at that point, mostly what happens is they end up, it's mostly their best comes out, because there's also that you're facing so-and-so, I want to make sure that I'm at my best also. So the real reality is obviously for us is on the field, like what these guys are actually doing on the field. And that's when, you can't hide that for long. Sometimes I find players would be like, okay, so-and-so is watching me, so I better be at my best, and that works, And then the parents would come, hey, you need to be in all these matches. I've never seen him do this well, But then that we know is not going to be long-term or consistent till they get used to my face, Then after that, and so I want to say that, okay, when I observe, it's like more like when you see them in the that is the reality for me. Not what you say or not what you kind of write out, but what actually you do. So based on what I see is and then I see them over a period of time, not just like one day, he could be not at his best, and then I come up with a solution. I kind of, traverse that over a couple of weeks or 2 weeks. One is during practice. What are the stuff that they do? I don't mention to them that I'm observing you like that, but so that they can be themselves. And then over a period of 2 weeks, and then also see them in events. Again, 2 or 3 events. Once I have that kind of like a package, then I can kind of say, okay, this particular person needs to go through so-and-so, form of training. And again, that's why, just seeing that itself should give you like, okay, one guy will go through a particular method, another one will go through a completely different method. Some person just like a visual representation of what they need to do, and they do it just fine. Others need to be like, okay, when you go from this side to the other side, you need to do this. And so for them, they feel like, this guy I like because he lays it out for me. So that's why there's no, and some guys are like, would want, 10 minutes of calmness before they go in. And so any kind of devices that help them do that, is good. Mm-hmm. Some people like mindfulness, like I want a device that helps me track stuff right throughout the day. So we would give them mindfulness tools, not just for on the field, but also outside. And so then they carry that, and then they see, and they would call me like middle, say, hey, this thing buzzed about 3 times today, and I'm glad you gave me this, because now I cannot fight this device. I can fight you, but I will not fight this device because the device is more right. But in terms of, because they look at it, okay, it's almost like they are in a way, surrender to the gadget in a way, but at the same time, it's a good form of correcting,
feedback.
But some might be like, why would a device need to do that? So, like I said, to each, it's very custom, and so that's why you have guys who will be asking, what does this player do? Why can't you? Can you just give that template? And see if it applies to my son. Obviously it's like, it's not like, okay, Mera Ashirwad hai, here you go, you're blessed. Not like that, but it's you do have people like that asking.
Yeah.
People. So go ahead.
So is there a fundamental difference in how you coach in terms of mental conditioning to an individual sport and a team sport? What are the key differentiators?
Yeah, and very good question, because the again, if the individual sport, it's more like it's one-on-one, where they're going to be more open about stuff, and then it's obviously like it's like one-on-one sessions. Of course players get the most out of it, and they kind of open up in ways that in more ways than for them, and so that way we get to see different aspects, and obviously they benefit the most too, because they know what they need to do. And then so the training methods, obviously, like especially drills and simulation sessions, when it comes to individual, obviously like tennis players, many of them are going to be on the individual side. And then of course there are doubles teams and stuff like that. But when it comes to group, it's fascinating because you are trying to inspire a team, to perform cohesively. Like Steve Carroll of SeattleSeahawks is a very good example. He's a coach, he's an NFL coach, but also he imbibed the principles of Tim Gallwey and wanted to see how we can take this to our players, and still date he swears by it. And again, it's about cohesively getting the goal as a mental coach for me is to, again, it's like what is going to we would have our share of individual sessions with each of the players, true. And then cohesively we'd say, because each one has got to understand, it's like, okay, we don't show them it's not, the movie kind where like Lagan or something, here you go, we're going to get this, not like that, because it doesn't work that way. But we do get, once they each one understands the principles. So we would do one-on-one for sure, and then when we do the sessions as a team, they are aware of, each one is aware of their responsibilities on that front, because eventually the goal is to see the person next to you is you. Once they are convinced that I am, when I'm doing this thing for the team, I'm also helping my fellow player. And then, so when the fellow player is down, they kind of go out there to, come on, we can do this, kind of like inspire them through their actions, and also with a sincere care for their fellow partner. So that's kind of how we, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's the reason why there is this curiosity is within the team sport, there is this interesting dynamic of being able to be performing, to be there on the team, which means competing with the others within the team, and then collaborating to defeat the others. And sort of in corporate scenario, it pretty much is also the similar thing where you set up teams, you are also competing with the other for different designations and promotions, but together as an organization you want to also achieve certain objectives to have better market share or better growth. So have you meditated on this aspect of how do you solve, because I think the whole, at least in my limited understanding, I think a lot of research is going in trying to see how do we drive the best mix of competition and collaboration. I know there are no thumb rules or formulas, but what has been your meditation on this?
Yeah. So we've done some work for companies like IBM, and where the whole idea is, and also a company here locally, the whole idea is to help these even if it's a question because you're talking about the challenge is very similar, because you're looking at cohesive performance to achieve a higher goal, and where obviously the ego needs to take a back seat, and yet you're looking at performing at your best. Obviously, like whenever you are going to perform at your best and kind of cohesively achieve that. If you look at Virat, he's Kohli right now in the Indian cricket team is a good example, and even MS Dhoni when he was around, he would always be that. Okay, just looking at him, players get inspired, and the best comes out when he is with them. What is he doing? Because I think his purpose and cause why he's out there is very clear. Which is one of the main things. To answer your question on that is breathing in a sense of purpose and why you're doing this to every. It is me with the individual more on that front, because if I just say it to 10 people, that. One or two are going to get it, and they're going to take it, and 8 might not. Or 8 might just say, this is just a waste of time, or, whatever, just kind of like, you have other things to think about. But once the purpose is fed clearly into the thing and into the system, then they are able to. It's a big challenge, no doubt. And again, these things are like, it's not like I'm going to see that consistently every day. One of the big things which you've seen in teams like Australia, which can maintain so much consistency, their purpose of wanting to be the best ever team was so ruthless. And obviously, it's a combination of talent and a lot of other things. But there was 9 out of 10 things they would do it more consistently than the other teams. Which, when you look at it, like, that is what inspires people, and people can formulate their own theories around it. But I would say the biggest thing is, like, you have these performance coaches who work with, all these athletes. That is one thing, that they make sure that, okay, that you have a role. There's a reason why you're doing this. We believe in you. And then what happens is guys take it really to the heart and seriously. Okay, so the reason I'm doing this is to help me take me to that highest level, and I'm going to play that role as to the best I can. So when you have a group, so each one dedicating themselves to a purpose like that, then again, it's then each one gets inspired by the other, and then again, you won't see, like, you'll probably have one event like that in like 9 or 10 games, but then that one event gives them that hope. Wow, we are much more capable of doing more when we take this kind of an approach, and then they want to see that consistency, and they start adhering to it more. And it's a challenge, no doubt. In the corporate side, it's like we are competing with each other. I think it's beautiful to see the current Indian team is kind of like that. There is that they are competing with each other, but they also are happy for each other's success. Because okay, well, so if Shikhar is out of the team, then there's immediate curiosity, like, how is this guy doing? Is he all doing good and everything? There's that concern, and they are equally still, even now, they have I feel, at least with Shikhar, is like he's got that right mindset, like saying, okay, I'm enjoying it. I'm doing my thing, and so which means they have gone a little bit ahead, not just in terms of like, not that, okay, I'm not part of the team, I need to do this, that. Not that they're becoming jealous or anything. They know that they got the tools now, and they're going to do whatever it takes to achieve that. So I guess once the instillment of purpose is done to each of the players, and I think this applies to the corporate level as well, is to then what happens is it takes them and once they imbibe it, again, it's custom. It's not same thing for the way the purpose, eventual purpose is the same, but the way that I present the purpose to each one would be a little bit different based on their skill set and what kind of gets them excited. And so if you look at the team sessions, that's how we roll. And I won't say the same to one particular guy and say the same to the other, because it seldom works that way, unless you're twins.
Makes sense, yeah. Last few closing curiosities, Badri. How do you keep yourself updated or learning? What do you generally do to update yourself on things?
Can you raise up your volume? It's kind of, yeah.
Is this better? Is this okay?
I'm over here. Let's hold on.
Okay. Is this okay?
Yeah, suddenly your volume went a little bit down.
Now it's okay? Now it's okay?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, so you're asking about
how do you keep yourself updated on
updated. Again, it's there are a lot of I do a lot of conferences on a yearly basis. We do about 6 or 7 at least. We are always, I mean, with the media and obviously with the way information on the internet is right now, there's always stuff that you're learning. I do spend almost on a daily basis on some level of magazines, be it mindfulness, be it the latest technology out there. I do spend about 20 to 30 minutes on a daily basis on things like that. That way it's not like I'm going to use it right away. I'm going to be like, okay, that's interesting to know, and then something comes up. And 9 or 10 times I've always seen like the stuff that I would have just discarded comes to my help. It's like like your wife telling you need to do this, and then you think, I'll do it later, and then that one particular activity turns out to be the most important thing. So I do pick and choose on a lot like that. We do a lot of sports psychology conferences and seminars that I attend once every 3 months on those, where you're presenting, or even being part of these seminars to learn about different methods. And again, it's not just psychology, even fitness later stuff play an important role, where you're like, okay, this is going to really help. And then I would kind of keep that in mind. Not that I'm going to take into fitness, but I will say that to our team. So there's different, I learn about all these, try to keep myself updated. And also, as part of our profession, we are required to kind of do credits related to that, and make sure that again, that your brain is always, and then you come up. Earlier, it used to be like, I got to do this kind of thing. Now it's more like, okay, based on your experience, like, okay, this is the thing that I want to like, present a paper on, or write do some research and present it to the sports psychology groups and stuff like that. That way, not just for credits, but just for the fact that, hey, this is something worth spending your time on, and come up with some data and theories to back it up and stuff like that. So our field is one beauty of it is like because it's a brain and all that. It's it's never ending on that front.
Yeah,
we keep us updated.
Yeah. Last curiosity, Badri. Education system. What do you have to from your experience? So suppose you were to advise or request or submit to education system so that they imbibe certain things in the curriculum. What would be the few things that you could tell or suggest that they could imbibe in their curriculums?
Yeah, it's it's a very, 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 again, really great questions today, and really good ones. So this one, I would say that the first thing that even into school curriculums, or even at college levels, is to say a person is particularly good. You identify these like extracurricular activities, like you have nowadays things like sports scorecard and stuff like that, where sport is the primary focus. Not that academics is not. Is to inculcate, like, for example, if I'm good at tennis, then I want to do well at this. Like, if you look at IMG academies in Florida, where a player with an emphasis on tennis, so you're not going to force him to play golf every day, or kind of say, you have this much and you have tennis, you're going to spend 1 hour a day. And then obviously so it's like, schools for kids become like a core, and then that becomes almost like an end in itself. So not like that you have to have the foundation stuff, you need to make sure that your academics are good. But if you identify somebody really good at something, then having that customized sense of feel, so that when they come to school, okay, I got these classes to attend, but then I have my 3 to 5 of tennis training with so and so, or even exercise, stuff like that related to that particular field. If you do that at a young age, that way they're not compromising on academics. So I would say if the sport is ingrained as part of the curriculum, I think we've seen tremendous success. The United States has seen tremendous success in that, and even European countries. And for us to become like a sporting nation on that front, I would say that would be like my paramount advice or recommendation, is to inculcate that into the training process. Once you do that, I guess what it does also is like it increases motivation of players for coming to school, obviously, and also the fact that they have a sense of purpose and not kind of getting lost into the routines. We want to keep the simple vision is like we need to keep kids need to have their dynamism and want to do well in life, and sport offers you that opportunity, not just watching it in front of the TV, but just gives them that level of investment. And the biggest thing for us is like, I don't know, I need to ask you more, like, do we still have these moral science classes, the last period of the day? Do we still have that? If we, I think we need to definitely inculcate a little bit of spiritual thing in a more uh, customized what is happening out in the world, like a practical level, and that needs to be, I feel like, part of every curriculum.
Yeah.
Be it doesn't have to be in one particular form of religion, but just something like that would at
But
least keep the subconscious tuned.
perhaps
Because right
back.
now I remember my moral science classes back from school, but it'll be something good to have that, because the current world's getting crazy. So something like that will really help.
Yeah, that's great, Badri. Badri, it was great chatting with you. I think we really got some wonderful insights and anecdotes, and I'm sure we'll have some more interactions in the future and unpack some of the things that you just discussed with us. Thank you so much for your time.